Donald Trump promised during the election campaign here in the US that he was going to end the war in Ukraine and bring peace to the Middle East. Well, now, of course, he's won the White House and the ball is in his court. Are these promises for real? What's he actually going to do about these conflicts? And how do people in the regions affected by these wars think about what's coming next? Well, I've been talking to two of DW's top minds about this. Roman Goncharenko from our Russian and Ukrainian service and host of the show Geofactor, and Dima Tarhini from our Arabic service. She's the host of our show Masaiya. Okay, let's get to it. Roman, let's start with you. The promise that Trump has made on the campaign trail over the past year has been the most sort of distinctive with respect to the Ukraine war, even saying that he would be able to end it within 24 hours or something like that. How did that go down in Ukraine?
Well, the Ukrainians, of course, were very nervous. They were hoping maybe, I think, that Kamala Harris would win the elections, but then they saw also the polls, so they knew it was a tight race. And when the news came that Trump will be president again, they already have started preparing for that. So President Zelenskyy have met him before. There were people traveling to Washington, trying to establish connections with the future administration. So as we speak, this continues. But on the other hand, that promise to end the war within 24 hours, people were really expecting something on the first day, when the news came and it was clear Trump is the winner. People were expecting him to say something, to do something, maybe to call Zelenskyy or Putin. We know that he did that on the second day. He spoke with Zelenskyy on the telephone, and later there were contradictory information about if he spoke to Putin or not. Washington Post has reported that he did. The administration of the Russian President Vladimir Putin said no. So we do not know. Maybe there was something. We can only speculate. But this shows the whole tension. Everybody is waiting what he will do. As long as we don't know for sure, people are just looking at who will be nominated for what position in the next administration, and is trying to analyze that. So we are still in a very speculative phase.
Yeah. So let's get to those nominations in just a minute. But before I go to Dima to get her take on her region, can you just quickly spell it out? Because this idea of ending the war so quickly, this was worrying for the Ukrainians because they thought, well, how do you end it quickly? Basically, you do a sellout to Putin of some kind. Yeah. I mean, could you spell out a little bit, what was the imagined scenario that they saw happening?
Well, the biggest fear is that Trump would say, we are not sending any more weapons to Ukraine. This, of course, would not mean that Ukraine would lose this war very soon, but this will make things very much more complicated for Ukraine. And this will mean that it depends, it depends how deep this cut will be or could be. If it's only just the weapons, or it's also the information from secret services, surveillance, satellite information, those things that Ukraine is very much dependent on from the United States, because the European allies cannot substitute that. So we have to wait and see. But the fear is still there that Trump will somehow, maybe not on day one, but later, first reduce and then cut the aid completely. This fear remains.
Yeah. So, Dima, with respect to the Middle East war, Trump was much less clear on the campaign trail. I mean, he talked about wanting peace and putting an end generally to the kind of sense of a world out of control. But he also has said things like that he felt that the US had to get out of Benjamin Netanyahu's way, implying a kind of a carte blanche for the Israelis to push further on the various fronts. So how did these statements go down in the Middle East, and what were the messages that were really getting through to people in the region about what Trump was thinking about?
There are so mixed opinions in the Middle East region, but first let me give you very quickly what's going on there. I mean, how the situation or the atmosphere it is right now. Basically, the Middle East region has changed dramatically in the last year, as we know. And Biden's administration, the way that they dealt with the Gaza war, with the hostages crisis, with also the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the war in Lebanon, the unstable situation in the Middle East, this all put new administration and Trump himself in a difficult task in order to continue what he started first. So basically, this put also the Arab leaders, some Arab leaders, in a big challenge in order to lower their expectations from what Trump can bring to the region. There are three opinions. The first opinion is saying, well, it doesn't matter who will come. One president will come, one president will go. It's the same. There's one core, basically, for the US foreign policy towards the Middle East. Israel comes first when it comes to the Middle East area. And so nothing will happen. It's the same policy. The second opinion, it's saying, yes, it's true. It's one core, but also different style. And they are, being optimistic about Trump because of his different style than Biden. Trump, basically, he promised in order to bring the end to this war. Do they believe him? No, they don't believe him. Do they trust him in this region, in the Middle East region? No, they don't trust him. But also, they are depending on his interest and his benefits from stopping the war. The first thing, major thing they are counting on is Trump wants to put the Saudis and also the Israelis on the same table in order to convince the Saudis to sign the Abraham Agreement, and basically there will be a huge benefit for the US. And many Arabs, they are saying this is great for us. That means Trump need to stop the war first in Gaza, need to at least to make a ceasefire, to think about two-state solution in order to convince the Saudis to sit with the Israelis on the same table to sign the agreement. So basically, Trump will stop the war sooner or later. And there's a third opinion is saying that forget about it. Trump is bad news, basically, for the Palestinian. Let's not forget that he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. Basically, he cut the US funds to UNRWA, and maybe he will do it again. Biden brought it back in 2021, so maybe he will do it again. Nobody knows what will happen. Let's wait and see how he will deal with Iran, more sanctions, harder sanctions on the Iranians, how the Iranians will react. So maybe it would be bad news for the region. So there are three different opinions now, and a division basically towards Trump being the president of the United States.
And that's so interesting. And you saw the impact of some of those mixtures of opinions on Arab voters in the United States as well, didn't you? In that Trump did manage to peel away quite a few Arab voters from the Democrats, people who were just frustrated with the Biden administration's approach. So, and let's then take a look at some of the people who are ending up in key positions. Yeah. So the kind of the top two picks in terms of the national security team are Mike Waltz, who will be national security advisor, and Marco Rubio, who will be Secretary of State. These are two people who are seen as pretty kind of classically hawkish Republicans.
So basically, if we are mentioning Rubio and also Waltz, both men, they are sharing, they share Trump's hardline position when it comes to Iran, and this is very important for the region. That means, he will be harder when it comes to the sanctions, as I mentioned before, and everyone is waiting. What does it mean for the whole region if there are going to be more sanctions on Iran? So we know that both men, they are sharing his vision, they are sharing like his hardline position, let's say, towards Iran. So this is expected. We are only waiting for this decision to be taken. But I want to highlight two other persons, basically. They will be in power. The former Arkansas governor, Mike Huckabee. Basically, it's a big question mark in the Arab world, and you can see the Arab media, they are talking about it. He was appointed to be an ambassador to Israel, and basically he has a big history based also on the US media. He has a big history when it comes to anti-Palestinian racism with his sentences that he said, for example, there is really no such thing called Palestinian, and he is against a two-state solution. He's going to be the ambassador. And the other person that everyone is talking about now in the Middle East, who's going to be the special envoy to the Middle East. I'm talking about Steve Witkoff. He's a real estate investor. He doesn't have a diplomatic experience or any experience in diplomacy, but also let's not forget what he said when the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, he wanted to give his speech in the Congress, and he said that he made sure in order to attend it because of its spirituality. And everyone is saying spirituality, but also there are like thousands of Palestinians they are killing, they've been killed. And also, I mean, the hostages case is not solved yet. We don't know what happened to the hostages, Israeli hostages. So these two persons, they are going to be appointed and to be related to the Middle East. And there's a big question mark when it comes to Huckabee and also Witkoff, in addition to Rubio and also Waltz when it comes to Iran on the other side. So it's going to be very interesting and a lot to talk about in the coming month.
Roman, starting again with those top two personalities of Rubio and Waltz, how are they being seen in Ukraine?
So when the names came out, I think there was a sign of relief in Ukraine because we are having two politicians who are professionals, who have a certain record, and especially Marco Rubio in his early days was very much supportive of Ukraine. Before that, he was considered one of the moderate Republicans. And I think people think, even if he's now a Trump supporter, maybe deep inside, we can talk to him, so we can reason with him, and maybe he will persuade Donald Trump not to cut off military aid to Ukraine. So there are a lot of moderate hopes, I think, connected with Marco Rubio. With Michael Waltz, it's a new name for Ukraine, but his military background, what he said before, there was nothing that would raise the alarm signs in Ukraine. With other personnel, it is not so, especially with Tulsi Gabbard, who used to be a Democrat, is now a Trump supporter, Republican. She is very much known in Ukraine and in Russia as well. So in Russia, they were drinking champagne when they heard that she should control the United States national security agencies, so should supervise all the secret services.
That's right, to become director of national intelligence. Yeah, so this supervisor.
Exactly. So not just one, but all of them, because she was criticizing the war in Ukraine, criticizing U.S. foreign policy, advocating just pull out of all wars, all conflicts, cut all aid to all countries. And especially in the case of Ukraine, she was speaking about, she was repeating Russian allegations that there were secret biological laboratories on Ukrainian territory. So something that the Russian propaganda was repeating a lot at the beginning of the war, at the beginning of the big invasion. And she was quoted by all Russian media. So they were very happy to hear her name and her position, especially. In Ukraine, a lot of people were shocked that she because of her nomination. This is something that the Ukrainians didn't expect. And some of them say that they hope that she will not be confirmed. So they believe that maybe this is not the last pick. Maybe there will be resistance inside the U.S. New administration or the Congress or you name it. So this is the hope. If she is confirmed, people expect that maybe some sensitive information could be vulnerable to Ukraine that she could have access to.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the most striking nominations, isn't it? If you think that the kind of journey she's been on, from somebody who the day after the invasion happened in February 2022 was tweeting pretty much the Russian line that Russia's security interests had not been respected, suddenly to be given the prospect of being in control of all of American intelligence, that's quite a journey. But I think that's a good point, Roman, that with a number of Trump's appointments, it is possible that they will run into trouble in the confirmation process. And just before we move on to kind of a little bit of a sense of what's next in the next few weeks, but there's also the Elon Musk factor. And I know that in some areas of the world, in some of the geopolitical situations that the world finds itself in, the Elon Musk factor is a significant one. And for instance, Starlink has been important to the Ukrainian defense effort. Roman, maybe first to you and then to Dima, what is the Musk factor that we need to be looking out for in the next few months in the region?
Well, this is a very influential person. So we know that first, we do not know what exactly his agenda is, because Musk has been very critical of Ukraine in the past on his social network X, the former Twitter. On the first hand, he provided his Starlink when Russia first invaded Ukraine, and it was a huge help for Ukraine. But on the other hand, later he withdrew that Starlink for the occupied territories. So on the front line, it doesn't work. And we know reports about Ukrainian attacks, especially in the Crimea region, that failed because Starlink was just turned off. And there were media reports that he was present during the first telephone call after the election, when it was clear that Donald Trump has won the election, between Trump and President Zelenskyy, that Musk was there, which is very unusual. He has no role. He's not a diplomat. He's not on the team officially, at least not at that time. There were those reports said that he promised that he will continue giving the Starlink to Ukraine, providing that service, which is crucial to Ukraine. We should remember that. But on the other hand, people still are asking what exactly is his agenda, because there were also reports about his talks with Russian President Putin. He seems to have a connection to Moscow through his SpaceX, so space business, because Russia is also a space power. So there is a connection there. And there are a lot of questions, how far those connections go, and what exactly is the aim of Donald Musk? What role will he play in the future Trump administration? Will he be a kind of a shadow foreign minister, back channel to Moscow? We do not know. We can only speculate. But this is a personality to watch for Ukraine and for Russia. Yeah.
You actually said slip of the tongue there, Donald Musk, but I think I think we can leave that in the edit, because I think that's probably these names are very much mixed up in people's minds at the moment. But just quickly before I go to Dima on this Elon factor, so just to be clear, Roman, I mean, if Elon for whatever reason in the process of talks or at any time switched off Starlink access for the Ukrainians, how damaging would that be? Is that absolutely critical to their continuation in this conflict?
Yes, that's absolutely critical. There is no real alternative with exactly the same coverage. So there could be some kind of alternative, but no other country in the world has such a network of satellites that Elon Musk has. So it will be not to compensate. So this will significantly undermine the Ukrainian efforts to fight back.
Okay. And Dima, what about in the Middle East situation? So Elon Musk, there was a lot of attention on him making connections with Benjamin Netanyahu a year or two ago. What kind of a role does he play in the Middle East right now?
I want to agree with Roman on one thing, that we have to wait and watch Elon Musk. What is his true agenda, actually, not only in Ukraine, but also in the Middle East too. It's the same. There was a lot of anger, as we know, after the 7th of October, the way he started tweeting on his on X page, and the way that he started giving information. Even the EU said that he's giving disinformation. when it comes to Hamas, when it comes to Gaza, when it comes also for the hostages and everything. There's a lot of anger. So many Arabs, basically users, they stop using X or tweeting there. But now everyone is looking and saying, okay, what he's going to do in the Middle East. I mean, he has Tesla. In last October, we know that there was a big rumors or information. Later on, it became an information that he's going to expand Tesla in the Middle East. That means many jobs will be there. So everyone is looking, okay, fine, if he will open Tesla, like a big factory in the Middle East, that means, the economy, but we don't know where. Is it in Saudi Arabia? Is it related to the Abraham agreement? Is it related to UAE? Is there's going to be a competition between the GCC countries, especially UAE and Saudi Arabia, when it comes to Elon Musk, who's going to bring him more to his region in order to benefit? So it's all about benefit and interests. This is exactly what they are talking about. But when it comes politically, I mean, I don't know if he will have any role politically in the Middle East or any influence, but we know, as you said, that he supported Benjamin Netanyahu in his war in Gaza, and he has a position there. So, but it's always interesting for the Arab people in order to take a look what he's going to do and what he's doing and what he's saying and what he's tweeting and this kind of thing. But Tesla expanding in the Middle East, it can be very interesting, by the way.
Yeah. So let's now finally just take a look at the weeks and months ahead and just sketch out, a couple of scenarios that you think we should be looking out for. Let's come back to you, Roman, just first of all. So the inauguration is obviously going to be in January. There's talk of talks, an assumption that Donald Trump wants some kind of effort at talks. So what are the things that you're going to be looking out for in the next few weeks in terms of the possibility of talks, and in terms of also, whether Ukraine starts running into military difficulties at some point soon?
Yeah, exactly. Ukraine is already facing problems. We see that Ukrainian troops are retreating. The heavy fighting continues, though the Russian army is advancing, and the tempo, the speed of that advance is increasing. And we know that in the past, Russia was able to use its advantage in winter when it's very cold, and occupy more and more territory. So by the time when Donald Trump will be inaugurated in January, the map of Ukraine could change. And this, of course, will have an influence on the talks. I do expect that we will have a meeting or meetings, probably separate, but maybe a joint one between President Trump and President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. I think it could come just a few days, maybe, or a few weeks after the inauguration, so early next year. And then it's the big question: what happens then? Before that, there will be consultations, and one scenario. There are two possible scenarios. One is that Donald Trump will say that we are cutting help to Ukraine completely, and we'll see what happens. Europe should take care of it. I personally do not believe that this will happen. I think more realistic is the second scenario, that Donald Trump will cut aid to Ukraine, but not completely. He will say that Europe should do more, and Europe, I think, is preparing for that. Germany is doing that as well, but other countries also. And then he will try to somehow give negotiations maybe some time, see what happens. So for a few months after his inauguration, I think the situation will be talks, but the war will continue. In the best case, there could be a kind of freezing of fighting on certain parts of the front line. This is an option. It has been discussed before. It is a possibility, but at the moment, I'm very skeptical, because Russia is actually winning. At the moment, as we speak, Ukraine is losing this war, and I see no reason for Russia to stop. If there are no additional weapon deliveries from the West, We do not know. Ukraine is still hoping to have green light from the Biden administration for deep strikes inside Russian territory. But on the other hand, we do not know what Biden would say, and we do not know what Donald Trump would say to that. Probably he will not agree to that. He will try to freeze this war. But if you ask me, I do not think that it is possible at the moment, because Russia doesn't want to stop. Russia wants much more that it controls now.
And yeah, that is going to be, and I hear that from talking to people here, this is one of the key questions. So Donald Trump has kind of presented himself as somebody who can achieve an easy deal. But why would Putin necessarily go for that? But then the ball does come back into Trump's court about to what extent he really is prepared to use leverage, the kind of leverage that then could, bring risks for the United States that the Biden administration did not want to go into. Will Trump be more open to those risks than Biden was? And this is a very, very open question right now.
Well, Trump already took risks with Russia when he first delivered lethal weapons to Ukraine in 2018. They were not so powerful. They were anti-tank missiles, but still, it was something that the Obama administration didn't want to do, not to provoke Russia, as they said. So Trump also imposed sanctions on the Nord Stream 2, the gas pipeline, which was Vladimir Putin's favorite toy in Europe. So Donald Trump was ready to take risks with Moscow. He was very he was saying a lot of nice words about Vladimir Putin, but what he did was very much different from those nice words.
Yeah, but of course, the kind of risks that we may be talking about now are of a different category in terms of scale, different. Just before I then turn to Dima to look ahead with her, just to what extent do you think Ukraine, so if we look back a couple of years in the earlier stage of this war, in the last couple of years, the West was always giving this message: we are with Ukraine for as long as it takes, and Russia, at the very least, Russia cannot win this war. And some would even say Ukraine must win this war. Now it seems, there's been a fairly significant shift, and this is now the kind of the expectation now that Trump is in there, and he's not saying that sort of thing, that there's some sort of negotiated outcome is anticipated, and that this will likely involve Ukraine losing territory. To what extent is that now accepted in Ukraine, or do you think, or are there still voices in Ukraine that are convinced and committed to not accepting a loss of territory?
Well, it depends on what conditions. Ukraine will never accept those occupied territories as part of Russia. This was just never happened. What Ukraine could accept is freezing of the front line. But the major question is, what are the security guarantees that Russia will not go further in a year or two, when it just regroups, beefs up its army, and then starts again? This is the major fear in Ukraine. And Ukraine was hoping for a NATO membership. This is not on the table at the moment, and I don't believe that Donald Trump will give a green light to that. I may be wrong. But anyway, at the moment, we are seeing in the polls that there is a slowly growing minority in the Ukrainian society ready to accept the status quo at the moment. But by accepting, as I've said, they don't mean accepting the occupation. So they are ready to accept that we will not fight back for a while. They are ready probably to accept also a freezing of NATO aspirations. There is a growing acceptance to that as well. But we still have a majority of Ukrainian population, about 60%, who do not accept any compromises with Russia, who want to continue the fighting. But the mood is changing. Yeah, so the fighting is very, very difficult, and is getting more difficult for Ukraine because of man shortage. So this is the issue number one. Soldiers, not enough soldiers.
Yeah. And Dima, let's come back to you. So we have the ongoing wars in Gaza and Lebanon. We have the question about whether the Israeli government thinks that the time is right to really mount a significant attack on Iran and its nuclear program. And then thirdly, we have this discussion around these Abraham Accords that we were talking about earlier. So this attempt to normalize relations between Israel and its Gulf neighbors, and the big prize being Saudi Arabia. So these kind of three ideas, like where do you think people should be looking out for in terms of those three question marks now?
The big question mark is what Trump wants, basically, and what is his plan and strategy for the Middle East. Nobody knows till now. I mean, he promised to stop the war, he promised for the ceasefire, but he never said how. And this is a big thing and big issue. When it comes to normalize the relation between Saudi Arabia and Israel, this is priority number one for Trump. He started it basically when he was in the White House, and he couldn't finish it. And then Biden came and he failed in order to do that. And I think the main task for Trump is to bring both on the table, because this is related to the war in Gaza. If he will convince Netanyahu, the prime minister, Israeli prime minister, in order to stop the war, or at least for a ceasefire, he knows that there will be interest for everyone. And also, when it comes to America first interest and benefits from the Saudis, if this agreement will be done. This is related also, everything is related in the Middle East. One file is connected to the other. And if this will happen, and he succeeded in that, basically the question is going to be with Iran, what he's going to do with Iran. His relation with Iran was really bad. Biden, they say in the Middle East that he was softer with the Iranians, basically when it comes to the economic sanctions. And if Trump will push it harder on the Iranians, what does it mean for the Middle East and how the reaction is going to be? But I would expect, to be honest with you, Richard, that from now till January, nothing will happen. I mean, Netanyahu has the green light from the Americans in order to continue this war, even though that we are hearing from here and there that humanitarian crisis, the hostages, we should wait, we should bring aids to the Palestinians. But basically, he has the green light and he has the arms. It never stopped. He will continue doing this till January, till Trump will be in the White House. We know that the relation with Trump between both men is very strong. They have a really strong friendship when it comes to family between each other. And also there are so many benefits. So maybe Trump can convince him in order to have a ceasefire and nothing will happen to him politically in Israel. And after that, then we will see how things will turn out with the Saudis. I'm not optimistic, to be honest with you, from now till January. We're seeing what's happening also in Lebanon, and the war is continuing in Gaza. But in order to have a plan, or at least a clear vision from Trump in January, then maybe everything will be clearer. And step by step, we have to see first the Saudi-Israeli relation, second, the Iranian, and third, what will happen with Gaza, and what about Hamas and Hezbollah? Yeah. These are big questions. Until now, we don't have an answer from Trump. What is his plan?
And just one question on the Saudi view there, because there was a lot of talk in the first year of the war that for the Saudis to come around to talks again about normalization, that they would need to see some sort of progress towards a two-state solution. There's a sense that now things have moved on from that this is no longer going to be some sort of condition. Is that right?
Yes and no. Also that the Saudis, they are not very clear when it comes to that. But everyone in the region knows that two-state solution doesn't exist, to be honest with you. Even the politicians and the senior experts, they know that. Because two-state solutions, I mean, when we were hearing about it before, it's totally different than now. And actually, because so many things changed on the ground and so many things changed politically in the region. So we have to wait and see what the Saudis mean with the two-state solution. They are saying publicly, yes, there's a two-state solution, but we don't know what does it mean on the ground, because things have been changed completely.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap it up there. Dima and Roman, thank you very much. Obviously, a huge amount of uncertainty there at this stage, but I've learned a lot in this conversation. And yeah, we'll keep in touch on all of these things as we move towards inauguration. Thank you.
Thank you.